Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all an update to my Cardfight Vanguard Eugene deck profile for September 2025. Wanted to update the Eugene deck. Like the Flagberg Gravidia decks, Eugene steadily gets support throughout the many different booster packs, and since the last update to the deck was 4 booster sets ago, I figured an update was definitely due for one of the first decks that I ever built in the Cardfight Vanguard Standard Series. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the ride deck. For starters, we have the Energy Generator, with our Grade 0 being Double Gun of Duststorm Bart. When wrote upon, if you want second, draw a card. Our Grade 1 is Colored Strike Duststorm Colorus. When wrote upon by Roaring Bullet Duststorm Roanoke. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card with Duststorm and its card name from among them, reveal it, put it in the hand, and shuffle the deck. So it's just search power for a good majority of the deck that we run, with our Grade 2 being Roaring Bullet of Duststorm Roanoke. When wrote upon by a Grade 3 with Eugene and its card name, Energy Blast 3, draw 2 cards, choose a card from your hand, and discard it. So just more consistency to get cards in your hand. And when this card attacks, if your opponent has 2 or less rear guards, it gets +5. So early game on the Vanguard Circle could potentially be a 15k attacker alone, with our Grade 3 being Inferno of Duststorm Eugene, along with the copy that we run. In the ride deck, we run 3 additional copies in the main deck also. It's also regarded as Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene, so it can count for the older ability units that we run in the deck still also. And on Vanguard, once per turn, you can rest 2 rear guards, choose a column, and retire all of your opponent's rear guards in that column. So instead of just the retire 1 like the original Eugene was, this one has a retire 2. And on the Vanguard Circle, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 2 Grade 3 or less unit cards from among them, call them to rear guard in the same column, and with this card, then shuffle the deck. And this unit gets +5 until end of turn. If your opponent's Vanguard's Grade 3 or greater, and your opponent has 3 or more open rear guards, all units called by this ability also get +5. So it also gives you the additional option to call out multiple units in the same column to then be able to get an additional attack thanks to this card. But the big power in this deck comes down to the other units that we run as well, with our Grade 2s running 4 copies of Howitzer of Duststorm Dustin. With this card, when it's placed on rear guard, if your Vanguard is Heavy Artillery of Duststorm Eugene, put a card from your hand to the soul, draw a card, choose one of your opponent's Grade 2 or greater rear guards, and retire it. And when it attacks, you can Soul Blast 1, and it gets +2 until end of battle for each of your opponent's open rear guards, which could make it a potential +10k if your opponent has no rear guards. But then the additional setup to draw and retire makes up for the card you put into the soul, but also retires an opponent's Grade 2 or greater rear guard because of it. And then also the 4 copies of Resplendent Bullet of Duststorm Lugnit. With this card, with this unit on rear guard, if you have a Grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Eugene and its card name, you can Soul Blast 1, rest this unit, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and retire it. And on rear guard at the beginning of your battle phase, if your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, stand this unit and gets +5 until the end of turn. So just one of the easier restand options, since you'll rest your rear guards for Eugene's own ability. You want to be able to restand them again to then be able to attack into your opponent's Vanguard. And that's where Lugnit comes in handy, because then you also have just the option to rest her yourself to retire an additional opponent's rear guard, with some of our other Grade 2s being the 3 copies of Great Flame Axe of Ambitious Scales, Kolga Flame. When it's discarded from hand during your ride phase, Soul Blast 1, put this card on the bottom of the deck and draw a card. And when it's placed on rear guard, if you Persona Road this turn, you can Counter Blast 1 and retire all your opponent's rear guards in the same column as this unit. So having the same ability as Eugene, just for the cost of a Counter Blast, which really isn't too big of a concern for the use of the Counter Blast in the deck, but still useful to set up more of the empty rear guards that we want, but also used for the ride deck draw power. And then lastly, for the Grade 2s, 2 copies of Dragritter Durgam. When it's placed on rear guard, if you have a Grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Eugene and its card name, Soul Blast 1 and Energy Blast 3. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. If you did not retire a card, draw a card, and this unit gets on rear guard once per turn. At the end of the battle, your Vanguard attacked. Choose one of your front row rear guards and stand it until end of turn. And if you played a normal order this turn, it gets boost. So while you don't normally play the normal orders in the deck anymore, Best Harvest isn't really required for draw consistency in the deck anymore. You use this as more or less a restand power for a unit to then be able to attack, and choosing another front row rear guard and stand it because of it as well for multiple attacks thanks to this card. If you wanted to run additional copies of this card, you could always try dropping down 1 copy of Dustin and 1 copy of Kogaflan for 2 additional copies of Durgam. For the grade 1s, 4 copies of Springing Bullet of Duststorm Glynis. When your opponent's rearguard is retired during your main phase, if you have a grade 3 rearguard Vanguard with Eugene in its card name, you can stand this unit and gets +5 to end of turn. So just another easy way to restand a rearguard that you may have used for Eugene's rest ability. And if you have a grade 3 rearguard Vanguard with Eugene in its card name, it gets +5 shield, making it a 10k shield in hand, which is why we run the 4 copies as well, just for an additional guard shield, but just a good restander when rested for Eugene's ability to then restand again off of its own ability once per turn. Another important rearguard is Oswald, which is the rearguard at the end of the battle boosted a Vanguard with Eugene. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater and they have no rearguards, counter +1, discard a card from your hand, choose one of your Vanguards, stand it, and increase or decrease its critical and drive to 1 until end of turn. So it takes away some of the additional power you may have given to Eugene, but it keeps the additional pressure that this card can provide for being able to restand your Vanguard, obviously, thanks to this card. So a definite 4 of, so we always have this card as an answer, since it adds to the actual pressure that our Vanguard can use against our opponent as well. And then also the 3 copies of Stormband Dragon. When it's placed on rearguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Eugene in its card name, Energy Blast 3, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. If you did not retire a rearguard, draw a card, and this unit gets +5 to end of turn. And at the beginning of your battle phase, if your opponent's rearguard was retired this turn, stand this unit, making it another viable option to use for the rest with your Eugene on top of this and Glynis, because then they'll both restand. So you can keep other cards like Lugnit to then be able to restand off of their own abilities as well for this card to use. And then the new grade 1 that we run in the deck is Waterclad Bow of Blue Scales Bogart. When it's placed on rearguard during your main phase, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Eugene in its card name, choose one of your rearguards and stand it. So then it helps for additional stand power as well, for we can then use this card to restand cards like Lugnit, and then have the option of you to use her own skill, restand it with Bogart, and then use the rest ability of Eugene, all with the 1 rearguard. So it helps to preserve other rearguards we may not be able to restand by using this card as an option to restand rearguards that have already used their rest ability. With the rest of the grade 1s just being the Sentinel lineup, so 4 copies of Twin Buckler Dragon. If you want to run Elementary Sanctitude, you can just drop 1 copy of this card down for a copy of that one. And then our trigger lineup in the deck with a restanding Vanguard. We're running the 8 critical just for the added Vanguard pressure that can provide for the restand, and still having 1 drive check afterwards as well. The 3 copies of Flare Veil Dragon, which we have draw consistency enough in the deck, so just 3 of this card. If you wanted to try out some front triggers, you can always put them in this spot also. With lastly the heals being 4 copies of Parasolis, and the over trigger being Dragveda for additional restand power of our Vanguard. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Definitely a fun deck. Like I said, I've had Eugene for the longest time with an updated Vanguard since set 5. Definitely a change needed for the deck, but a good majority of the deck still retaining the same playstyle that it always had. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.